That's it. She's getting married. And by some cruel mockery of fate, he is a witness at her wedding. They've been friends since high school. Kevin was a fun guy, and all the girls had a crush on him. Valerie was more of a boy's character. Also, there was Nicholas, just a good friend. The three of them were always together. They climbed trees together, skipped classes together, and were scolded for that together. It was the adolescence that messed everything up. Valerie suddenly realized that other girls had a different type of friendship with boys, and they dressed differently, and they even began to wear makeup. One day she saw one of her classmates get flowers from an older boy. She came home and, for the first time ever, she looked at herself in the mirror differently than usual. Some untidy boy was looking at her from the mirror. This boy barely looked like a girl. Her hair was short and messy. Valerie always cut it short because it was more comfortable, and she was wearing baggy jeans and a shirt. Only the pink squiggles as a pattern could tell that the shirt was a female shirt. Valerie was horrified. She had no idea what to do and walked to her mother's room. She hesitated for a moment, but finally she said, "Mother, can you buy me some kind of dress?" Her mom tried not to show how surprised and delighted she was that her daughter finally realized that she was a girl, and replied, "Of course, sweetheart." After buying all sorts of dresses, skirts, and blouses, Valerie and her mother went to the beauty studio, where she got her hair done in a more feminine way. When Valerie entered the classroom the next day, everyone stopped talking and stared at her. Then one of her classmates asked with a chuckle, "Valerie, have you fallen in love or something?" "Yes, I'm in love with myself," Valerie replied, and walked to her desk. Gradually, everyone forgot about her previous appearance. The girls began inviting her to their girls' hangouts, and the boys began to pay attention to this beauty. Kevin and Nicholas remained her best friends. She still spent most of her time with them, but she didn't participate in their activities anymore. "You know, Nicholas, I think I'm in love," Kevin decided to share a secret he hadn't stopped thinking about lately. They were sitting on the bench in the schoolyard, waiting for Valerie from her extra class. "No way, who's the princess?" Nicholas couldn't believe his ears. Almost all the girls had a crush on Kevin, but previously he'd been somehow indifferent to them. Our Valerie. Everything went cold inside Nicholas. He had been hopelessly in love with Valerie ever since she looked and acted like a boy. But he was too shy, so he didn't show it and didn't dare to confess to her. And now, his best friend, a handsome guy, tells him that he is in love with Valerie. Valerie and Kevin's relationship began to develop rapidly. By high school graduation, they were already planning to get married. Nicholas suffered in silence. If there had been a single hint that their relationship wasn't as good as it seemed, then Nicholas would have made up his mind and told Valerie how much he loved her, how he wanted to be there for her, and would do anything to make her happy. But Valerie and Kevin's relationship was perfect. They were in love and happy. In their last year of university, Nicholas received a wedding invitation as the groom's best friend and a witness. Nicholas's dreams of ever being together with Valerie were shattered. 7 years ago, when Nicholas was still a computer science student, he had the opportunity to go to England for an internship. During his internship, the head of one of the local software companies noticed him. He offered Nicholas the chance to return to London after graduation to work for their company. Nicholas happily agreed. The very next day after receiving his diploma, he left for London. He loved his job, enjoyed learning the ins and outs of it, and fully dedicated himself to the work process. Not surprisingly, Nicholas's career skyrocketed, and now, 5 years later, he was the head of a major department. "I'm listening to you." Nicholas had just finished a major project that had lasted almost a year, and he hoped the chief would grant him a vacation as a reward. "I'm very impressed with your work. You are a truly unique employee. With you, my company has started to bring in a decent income." "Thank you, I'm flattered. That's why I've decided to promote you." Nicholas was greatly surprised, since only the chief's position was higher than his current position. Seeing the surprise on his subordinate's face, the chief hurried to explain, "No, I'm not going to retire. I want to open another branch of my company, and I want you to be the head of the new branch. I hope you haven't forgotten your native language." "Do you mean that you want to open this branch in my homeland?" "Exactly. The work is already in full swing. They are already setting up premises and hiring people." "When would I start?" Nicholas mentally said goodbye to his vacation. "In a month. Brief your successor, get some rest, and you should be in your new office in a month." "So I can get a short vacation, right?" Nicholas couldn't believe his luck. "That's right. The sooner you train your successor and get everything done here, the more time you'll have for rest." Nicholas trained the new employee in just a couple of days. The successor turned out to be very smart and hardworking, and there were no difficulties. Nicholas decided to spend the vacation in his native country. He wanted to immerse himself in an atmosphere he had long forgotten. Nicholas had not been home since the moment he boarded the plane after his graduation. He communicated with his family by video link and regularly sent money to his parents, but he didn't want to return here. After Valerie and Kevin's wedding, he immersed himself in his studies to avoid thinking about Valerie and his lost love. Then a lucky internship came along, followed by a job in another place. Over the years, the spiritual wound healed. Nicholas thought of his friends less and less, but the future trip home reminded him of what he had forgotten, and he hoped that the wound had healed well enough not to bother him. At home, his whole family was waiting for him. Everyone rushed to hug him, shake his hand, and talk to him about everything. Nicholas decided not to stay at home, but to rent an apartment, which made his mother very upset. "Mom, I have an irregular work schedule. I can stay late at work, or I can take my work home and work all night. I don't want to bother you and wake you up every night, but I'll come every weekend to visit you. And now we will live in the same city, so we will see each other much more often than before." Valerie was standing on the platform of her native city, watching her parents hurrying toward her. "Sweetheart, it's so good to have you back," her mother said with tears in her eyes. Her father silently patted Valerie on the shoulder and took her suitcase. After dinner and long family conversations, Valerie and her mother relaxed on the couch, cuddling. "Are you on vacation, honey?" "Mom, I came home for good," Valerie sighed heavily. "What about Kevin? Is he coming later?" "No, Mom, he's not coming. We got divorced." After university, the newlyweds, Valerie and Kevin, also moved to another city. Soon they both got jobs, rented a small apartment, and started saving money to buy their own. With time, Valerie began to notice that Kevin became somewhat cold toward her and began to stay late at work more often. When she asked him about it, he answered that he was trying to work more to buy a future apartment sooner. That's why he was very tired. Valerie supported him in every way she could. She tried to feed her husband better, not to annoy him with talk, and completely shielded him from household chores. One day, Valerie felt unwell at work. Colleagues called an ambulance, and she was taken to the hospital. There it turned out that Valerie was pregnant. She walked home very happy. She wanted to cook a delicious dinner and please Kevin with the good news. Unexpectedly, there was someone in the apartment. Valerie was frightened, thinking it was thieves. She was about to run out of the apartment and call the police, but then Kevin came out of the bedroom completely naked. A second later, Valerie saw a girl behind him, also completely naked. Why did you come home so early? Kevin was upset by his wife's unexpected arrival. I got sick and they let me go home, Valerie replied without going into detail. And I see you took the day off? It's not what it looks like. It doesn't mean anything. I love you, but I'm a man and I need some variety. You're not a man, you're a moron. Valerie began to pack her belongings. After that, there were months of scandals. Valerie filed for divorce and moved in with a friend. Kevin came to her regularly and asked for forgiveness, but every time she refused. He began to insult and accuse Valerie of being the one to blame for his infidelity. After another scandal, Valerie felt unwell. She woke up in the hospital. Her close friend was sitting next to her. What happened to me? Valerie asked. Valerie, you're fine, but you lost your baby, her friend said quietly. Valerie became hysterical and started crying. She didn't know how to move on with her life. After being discharged from the hospital, Valerie began to prepare papers for the divorce. Her friend helped her find a good lawyer, and soon Valerie was a single woman. While the divorce proceedings were going on, Valerie was more or less fine. But when it was over, she was struck by the realization that her baby had died before coming into the world. She couldn't think about anything else. Suffering dragged her down. Eventually, her friend, watching Valerie suffer, suggested she go home to her parents, and Valerie agreed. Oh, my poor girl, you've endured so much pain. But why didn't you call and tell me? I could have helped you. I didn't want to worry you, Mom. All right, let's start our life from scratch. Your room has been waiting for you all this time. Move in. If you don't like anything, we can make repairs. I don't need repairs. I'm fine with everything. In the morning at breakfast, her mother started the conversation, trying to sound casual. Guess who I met recently? Who? Valerie wasn't really interested, but needed to keep the conversation going so as not to offend her mother. Nicholas, your childhood friend, her mother clarified, seeing that her daughter didn't understand who she was talking about. But he's in England, Valerie was pleasantly surprised. Well, apparently he's here on vacation. I think you should call him. Talk to him. It'll help you take your mind off your problems. I mean, you used to be best friends. We used to be friends, Valerie replied. She immediately remembered another childhood friend, Kevin, who had ruined her life. Nicholas is different. Her mother saw her daughter was sad. I'm not sure, Mom. No one knows what kind of person he became while he was in England. Valerie was walking out of the HR office of a newly opened company in their city. The chances of getting a job at this company were almost zero. A man was walking toward her along the hallway. As she approached him, she noticed that his face was very familiar to her. Valerie? Nicholas! Hi, what are you doing here? The man was surprised at the pleasant encounter. Hi, well, I came for a job interview, Valerie replied modestly. And how was it? Any luck? They said they'd call me back. Yeah, standard answer. How about a cup of coffee? There's a nice coffee shop downstairs. I'd love to. Is Kevin looking for a job too? Nicholas asked when they ordered drinks. We got divorced. He stayed in another city and I returned home. Nicholas suddenly felt extremely hot. He adjusted his tie and, as calmly as possible, asked, What happened? It's a long story. I'll tell you about it sometime. Valerie didn't want to talk about it. She still had feelings for her ex-husband and was angry at herself for that. But why did you come back here? For work. Nicholas didn't want to hurt Valerie by asking her more questions about her relationship with Kevin. They chatted some more, and after agreeing to go out together, they exchanged phone numbers and said goodbye. The next day, Valerie got a call from the head of Human Resources Department saying that she had successfully passed the interview and was hired. She was very surprised and delighted. Her mother, hearing the news, suggested going to the mall together to buy new clothes and celebrate the event with her family in the evening. Valerie's first day at work was very exciting. She arrived at work an hour before work began. As it turned out, not for nothing. The HR manager noticed this and accompanied her personally to her workspace. At the end of the working day, A girl walked into the office where Valerie had a workplace and said her last name. Valerie stood up. "The CEO wants to see you." "Who is that?" Valerie looked at her new office mate. "This is the CEO's assistant. You should go. The CEO's office is on the 3rd floor, at the end of the hallway. Don't be afraid." Her colleague, seeing Valerie's confusion, laughed. Valerie went up to the 3rd floor and headed for the big, massive door at the end of the hallway. "Come in, he's waiting." The assistant pointed to a door with a sign. Valerie entered the spacious office and froze in surprise. Nicholas was sitting at the desk. "Come in, take a seat. Do you want coffee?" Nicholas smiled at her casually. "Nicholas, but how?" "My boss decided to open a branch of his company here, and I happen to be the only candidate for the position of CEO." "So you're the reason I got hired here?" Valerie wondered. "Yes," Nicholas replied honestly, "but not because you and I are friends, but because you're a good and decent person, and I know you're smart. You can quickly learn the ins and outs of your new profession." "Thank you, I'll do my best." "I only have one request for you, Valerie. Don't tell anyone about our friendship. You know, we don't need unnecessary rumors." "Yes, sure, I understand." Valerie got up from her chair. "Maybe we could go to a movie this weekend? You know, I came back here almost 6 months ago, but I've hardly been anywhere yet." Nicholas tried to sound easy and carefree, but inside he was afraid that she would say no. "I'd love to!" Valerie decided to distract herself. It was time to stop suffering. She had to move on with her life. "Then I'll call you." "Yes," Valerie replied, and left. Nicholas exhaled with relief. He wasn't sure she would say yes. Deep in her eyes, he could see the pain that was tormenting her. He understood that Kevin had caused that pain, but she still loved him, even though she was hiding it, even from herself. Saturday night, Valerie twirled in front of the mirror. In the morning, Nicholas called and reminded her about the movie. "Valerie, dear, where are you going?" Her mother stood in the doorway. "To the movie." "With whom?" Her mother didn't even try to hide her joy. For the past few months, her daughter left the apartment only during the day, and only to look for a job or go to the store. "With Nicholas. Can you believe it? He's my boss. But that's at work. In our spare time, we're friends." From that day on, Valerie and Nicholas started to go out together on a regular basis. They went to the movies together, to a cafe, went to the theater a couple of times, and often took walks in the park. More and more often, Valerie thought she was very happy to spend time with Nicholas. She hardly ever thought about her ex-husband, but Nicholas, she thought about him all the time. And she didn't even think of him as just a friend. Over the years that they had not seen each other, Nicholas had matured and become self-confident. But at heart, he was still the same cheerful boy. Nicholas saw that Valerie was flirting with him more and more, that gradually he was becoming not just a friend to her, but a man. He was happy. More and more often he tried to hug her, to touch her. The relationship began to develop in a completely different direction, far from friendship. And then one day it happened. They woke up in the same bed at Nicholas's apartment. But while he happily made breakfast, Valerie escaped. Valerie's phone was unavailable the whole weekend. Nicholas wanted to go to her home, but decided to give her time to think it over. On Monday, after a meeting with the department heads, Nicholas's assistant entered his office. "Nicholas, there's someone here to see you. Let them in." Valerie entered the office. He was about to walk up to her and hug her, but something in her gaze stopped him. "Nicholas, we need to talk." And Valerie continued without waiting for an answer. "Everything that happened between us is a mistake. It was an impulsive, reckless act. I'm sorry for what I did. Please forgive me." "Valerie, it's no big deal. We're adults. We just wanted to relax. You have nothing to apologize for. It's okay. Just forget it." Nicholas realized he had been wrong in his conclusions about Valerie's changed attitude toward him. She was just trying to forget Kevin. But apparently, Nicholas was not the right man to help her do that. That night, Nicholas got drunk for the first time. For the past week, Valerie had been feeling nauseous. She tried not to show that she was sick, but it was impossible to hide the pallor and dark circles. She didn't want to think about it and put off going to the doctor until later, even though she knew she didn't have much time. Finally, her mother couldn't take it anymore. Meeting her daughter coming out of the bathroom, she asked directly, "Valerie, are you pregnant?" "Mom, I don't know." "Well, you need to know. Come on, let's go to the doctor." "But Mom, maybe next time." "If you're pregnant, you have to check your health and get registered with a gynecologist. If not, we need to find out the reason for your malaise." "Congratulations, you're pregnant. 7 weeks." The doctor washed his hands and sat down to write prescriptions. "I'll give you a referral for tests and a prescription for vitamins that will neutralize your nausea." "Great, I'm going to have a grandchild." Valerie's mother didn't hide her joy. "Is that Nicholas's baby?" "No, it's just my baby." Valerie was afraid to guess what Nicholas would think of her upon learning of her pregnancy. "I certainly understand your feelings, but don't you think he has a right to know about the baby? And the baby has a right to have a father? I don't want to tie Nicholas to me that way." "Don't tie him, just tell him. And then he will decide whether he wants to take care of his child or not. Why don't you give him another choice? You don't have to live with him. You can just raise the baby together." "Okay, Mom. I'll find the right time to tell him." "Nicholas, you have a visitor?" The assistant's voice interrupted Nicholas's reflection. He hadn't spoken to Valerie in almost 3 months. Short meetings in the hallways of the company building and polite greetings were all their communication. To Nicholas's surprise, Valerie's mother walked into the office. "Oh, good to see you. Would you like some tea or coffee?" Nicholas was really glad to see his guest. "I'd rather have a cup of tea since I've been having high blood pressure lately." The assistant brought tea and some sweets. "I'm happy for you, Nicholas. I always knew you were smart and would succeed." Nicholas listened and waited. He was sure Mrs. Patterson had come here for a reason. Something had happened. With Valerie, he was beginning to get nervous. Scary images flashed in his head. "Mrs. Patterson, so why are you here? Did something happen to Valerie?" "Yes, I was hoping Valerie would come to you herself, but I guess she never did. That's why I came. Don't think anything bad. I just want you to know, and whatever decision you make is your own business, and I won't judge you. Anyway, your short-term affair with Valerie ended with a pregnancy. She didn't want to tell you. She was afraid you'd think she was trying to tie you down. But I think you have a right to know about your baby." "You're right, Mrs. Patterson. There's no way I'm giving up my baby. And I won't let Valerie decide for the 3 of us. I'll stop by your place tonight. Just don't say anything to Valerie yet, because she can run away." "Mom, do we have guests?" Valerie came into the kitchen where it smelled pleasantly. Her mother was baking something in the oven while making a salad. There were several plates of appetizers on the table. "Yes, honey. Go put on a nice dress. I'll make everything myself here." Valerie, slightly surprised, went to her room. At about 8 o'clock in the evening, the doorbell rang. "Valerie, dear, open the door." Valerie opened the door and was dumbfounded. Nicholas was standing on the threshold with 2 bouquets of beautiful flowers. "Come in," was all she could say. Valerie's mother came out of the kitchen. "Nicholas, good to see you. Come into the living room." "Mrs. Patterson, please let me talk to Valerie alone first." Nicholas handed one of the bouquets to the woman. They entered Valerie's room. Nicholas shut the door and turned to Valerie. "Valerie, I understand that you don't want to impose, but I want this baby. And I want our baby to be happy, to have both a father and a mother. Let's forget about pride and independence. Now you need support more than ever. A man's support. And I want to give it to you. I promise I'll be a good husband and father. I mean, we've had a great friendship. I think we'll live together as friends, too. I'm not asking you to go to bed with me. I just want us to raise our child together." "Okay, I agree," Valerie replied after a short pause. The wedding was modest, and they only invited their parents, a couple of friends and relatives. After a while, Nicholas bought a spacious apartment, and the young family moved there. He was really very caring, spoiling her with nice gifts, giving her flowers, and going to the doctor with her. When their son was born, Nicholas took a vacation to help Valerie with the baby. And when the vacation was over, Nicholas suggested his wife hire a nanny. But Valerie flatly refused. She thought it was unnecessary because she was coping with everything perfectly well. Besides, the grandmothers of the baby helped her every day. Valerie also tried to take care of her husband, made him breakfast, cooked something new for dinner every day, ironed his shirts, and kept the apartment perfectly clean. From the outside, their family seemed perfect. No one would have guessed they lived in separate rooms. Valerie slept in the baby's room with her son, and Nicholas slept in his home office. Every night before going to bed, they both reflected on their relationship. Nicholas was still shy to tell Valerie about his feelings, to tell her that he loved her and wanted them to have a real relationship. And Valerie was afraid to confess that she dreamed of being in his arms. "Mom, do you think we should have a one-year birthday party?" Valerie walked with her son, deciding to stop by her mother's apartment. Nicholas had an important meeting. He usually stayed late at work on a day like this, and she didn't want to spend the evening alone. "Of course. I think Nicholas has already begun preparations." "Well, we haven't discussed it yet." "Well, let's talk about it this weekend all together. Come to us for dinner." Before Valerie could answer, the doorbell rang. Her mom rushed to open the door. A minute later, she entered the room with her lips pressed together. Valerie immediately understood her mother's displeasure. Kevin was standing behind her. "What do you want here?" Valerie didn't even try to hide her irritation. "Valerie, I came to take you home." "What makes you think I'd go anywhere with you?" "Come on, stop it. Whatever happened, happened. It's no big deal. After all, I'm a man, and men are polygamous, as you know. We love each other. Don't tell me you've fallen out of love in such a short time." "It's been almost 3 years. Do you think that's a short time?" "Well, honey," Kevin tried to come over and hug Valerie. "Get away from her, asshole." Mrs. Patterson kicked her former son-in-law out the door. "Valerie, I'm not going anywhere without you anyway," Kevin managed to shout one last time. "Mom, it's okay, don't worry. Kevin is the kind of person who doesn't like to fight for what he cares about. I learned that when I was divorcing him." "Still, it was better to kick him out. What if he charms you again, and you'll leave together with him like a naive fool?" "Come on, Mom," Valerie smiled. "I have Nicholas and my son now. I'll never part with them." "Really?" The mother looked intently at her daughter. She knew about their fake family life and was very worried about it. "Of course. I love them very much." Neither Valerie nor Mrs. Patterson heard Nicholas enter the apartment, and, hearing their conversation, he froze at the door. After waiting a little longer, Nicholas walked in. "I thought you were here, and I was right." "Oh, Nicholas, you're just in time. We were just about to have dinner." Mrs. Patterson fussed around her son-in-law. "What have you girls been up to?" "We were discussing whether we should celebrate our son's birthday." Valerie looked questioningly at her husband. "Well, why not? I think we can find a company that throws birthday parties for that age." "How about we celebrate with only family members, without strangers?" Valerie wanted a quiet family celebration. "Valerie, whatever you want. We can just invite our relatives over for a birthday dinner." Valerie decided to prepare everything for the holiday herself. To decorate the apartment and to cook dinner, she spent the entire week shopping for decorations and groceries. The day before the birthday dinner, she realized she'd forgotten to buy some groceries. Leaving her husband with her son, she headed to the nearest store. It was already dark outside. On her way home, she saw someone standing near the entryway. It was Kevin. "I was wondering why you didn't want to come back to me." He was very drunk. "And it turns out you found a rich man, and you're living a beautiful life with him." "Kevin, you're drunk. Go away." "So how do you like sleeping for money?" he continued, not listening to Valerie. "You cheated on me, left me for a rich life." "Actually, you're the one who cheated on me. I lost my baby because of you." "So come back to me and I'll make you a new one." "Shut up. I already have a husband and a baby, and I love them, and you were just a mistake. I still don't understand why I didn't see that you were such a bastard. You're just an asshole. Besides, you're an alcoholic." "Yeah, I'm a mistake." Kevin grabbed her and dragged her toward the park, which was not far from the building. "Now I'll show you what a mistake I am." Valerie wanted to scream, but he hit her on the head and she temporarily lost consciousness. When she came to her senses, she found herself in the park on a bench, and her husband sitting next to her, hugging her. And Kevin, who was badly beaten, was lying on the grass. She looked questioningly at Nicholas. "I had already put our son to bed, and you still hadn't come back, so I decided to go out to meet you. When I came out of the building and saw him dragging you toward the park, I ran after you. Luckily, I was faster than Kevin." "Nicholas, I hate you." Kevin said as he raised his head. "You've been following Valerie like a puppy all your life. She doesn't need you. She loves me. And anyway, she's my wife." "Well, first of all, she's my wife," Nicholas began. "And second," Valerie interrupted him, "I love Nicholas, and as I said before, you're a big mistake in my life. Let's get out of here, honey." They headed toward home. Kevin didn't follow them. Once home, Valerie went to the kitchen to get some tea and calm down. Nicholas followed her. They sat in silence, drinking tea. "You know," Nicholas broke the silence, "I didn't even realize how nice it is when the woman you love says she loves you, even under such terrible circumstances." Valerie put the cup on the table, got up, walked over to Nicholas, leaned down, and put her arms around his neck. "I really love you, you and our son, and I don't need anyone else." Nicholas sat her down in his lap and kissed her softly. Then again, and again. In a moment, they were kissing like it was the last time in their lives. In the morning, before she even opened her eyes, Valerie realized she was happy. Without opening her eyes, she turned on her side and felt Nicholas's hand. He pulled her closer and kissed her. They left the bedroom only about an hour later. And 9 months later, an adorable daughter joined their happy family. Joined their happy family. Joined their happy family. Joined their happy family.